What's up, you guys? Welcome back to the Nicotina Show. We are live doing an X-Men 97 reaction, and holy shit, I just got done watching X-Men 97, and it was fucking badass. In fact, I'll say this. There's a reason why the X-Men are the A-list characters of the Marvel Universe in the comics, because they cover more controversial topics, their characters have more depth, their characters are better, and it's an edgier, darker tone that I just absolutely love. And this show really, from the start, from the get-go, just seeing the intro to X-Men 97, which is very, very reminiscent to the original 97 intro, if not, eventually it's pretty much spot on. Just brought back all kinds of nostalgia, and it just already confirmed that, like, these characters are already entrenched in my nostalgia, in my comic book lore, and everything I like about Marvel Comics. So I was like, yes, I'm so happy to see these characters back. Granted, it's animation, but still, it's in the vein of X-Men 97, and it's a direct continuation from the end of the animated series back in 97. So, again, if you haven't seen the end of the original X-Men series, the series ends with Charles Xavier not necessarily dying, but he's taken away by Lilandra and taken to the Shi'ar Empire, where they can keep him alive, because their technology will be able to keep him alive. So they took him away at the end of the episode. So he's not dead. He's just not with us right now. But he's definitely going to return. I mean, he's featured in the intro, so he's definitely going to be back on the show. But this show picks up right where the original series left off, and I absolutely fucking loved it. It was so good. It just, right away, it was like, yeah, this is it. This is the reason why I love the X-Men. And just everything about it. And not only that, right? So Marvel animation, typically, in my opinion, is kind of ass. I'm not a huge fan of the Marvel animation style, but when it applied to X-Men 97 and how they kind of adjusted it just a bit to kind of fit that X-Men 97 feel, dude, it looked so good. It looked like the original X-Men series, but on steroids, because it had more motion, it just looked better, and I actually really enjoyed it. I think that all of the Marvel animation should look like this. Because it looked better. I'm sorry, they got rid of like the kind of shiny cheeks and shiny foreheads that you saw in like the the What If series, which is not bad. It's not a bad series at all, What If, but the animation really, really bothered me. So again, you guys, let's get on to X-Men 97. So this show picks up right where the original one left off, and now the X-Men are having to take on threats and enemies without having Charles Xavier there as their leader and mentor. And so Cyclops has to take on that role of being the pure leader of the X-Men. And in this story, you got Jean Grey, who's already pregnant with their child. Now, that child is projected to be Cable, because his father is Scott Summers. But already people are going to say, well, how can that be? Like, what do you mean? Because the problem with that is that everyone knows that Cable's mother is Madeline Pryor, who, if you don't know the comics, Madeline Pryor is a genetic clone of Jean Grey made by Mr. Sinister. So already they're laying the groundwork for the future of the X-Men. And like I said in the tweet, if you guys saw that, I have some theories about where X-Men 97 is going to go when it comes to the live-action MCU movies. Now, we were told in the past that this show, X-Men 97, is not connected to the MCU. But what does that really mean? I think what it means is that it's not connected to Earth 616, which is the main canon of the MCU. I mean, we're talking multiverse here, and we're going to get a lot of multiverse. What's up, Taladia? And Taladia, if you're free and you've seen X-Men, let me know, and I'll shoot you a link. Let me know on X. But anyway, so we're going to talk about that a little bit later in the show, because I have some pretty cool theories that I think will make this show even better as you move forward into the live action stuff. When we get to Deadpool, when we get to Fantastic Four, all that good shit, right? But this show was really badass, and I love the way the characters look. They look better. They look more detailed. Jubilee actually looks Asian in this, but you haven't seen it yet. Okay, cool. But she actually looks Asian. She looks better all the way around. In all the characters, I thought looked so much better. The one thing that I wasn't a huge fan of was Cyclops having to use the trigger on his visor. I never really liked that idea, but I mean, it was fine. It wasn't that distracting. I just think he should be able to fire it whenever he wants to, because what if he's fighting? He has to go, reach his hand up there. I mean, I don't know. I know he did that in the live action movies for the Fox X-Men movies, but I always thought he should just be able to fire it whenever he wants to. Some coffee. But yeah, no, it was really, really good. I mean, the first episode was good. The second episode was good, and I really enjoyed it. And the second episode had a huge, huge plot twist at the end of the second episode, which I will warn you, when we get to that part, it's going to be a spoiler section of the stream. Everything else, I'm not going to spoil. But that one I will at the very end of the stream, and I will let you know when it's time to actually to do that. So without any further ado, let me invite my good friend Mr. Node Cosa Nostra to the stream. What's going on, man?
What's up, man? How you doing?
I was like, unmute yourself.
Gotta unmute.
What's up, Anthony Beltray? So, dude, what did you think of X-Men 97? I thought it was badass.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Definitely, as I mentioned to you earlier, definitely picked up on that 90s nostalgia, but definitely bumped it up in a major way. It looks, from what I can remember watching it back in the 90s, it just looks so much cleaner and crisper. Yes. Obviously, technology, animation is a lot different now. You're talking almost 30 years, but still, as soon as I started watching the first episode, I was like, yep, this is it. This is that 90s feel, but so much better, so much cleaner. And the characters, it just feels like it picked up right where it left off. Especially that love-hate relationship between Cyclops and Wolverine.
Yes.
Having that banter back and forth. It's going to be interesting to see where this goes, especially, I won't mention spoilers, as you mentioned, for the second episode, but it's going to be interesting where this goes next for the next episode. I'm definitely looking forward to seeing how the story builds up. Even when they do like the finale for this season, and I think that's going to be really big.
Yeah, and I agree. The characters look better, the detail looked better, and I was saying to everyone who's watching at home, I think that Marvel Animation should do this for all of their
absolutely.
And I was saying like the Marvel What If series, it's fun, it's cool, but like I don't like the shiny foreheads and the shiny cheeks, and it has that glare effect, and I'm just like, dude, no, just do what you're doing here. This is better, and this looks better. It looks more like a comic.
Yeah, I think this is gonna take a lot of people. I'm hoping it takes a lot of people by surprise when they watch it. I know a lot of people haven't seen it yet. It came out today, so I'm sure a lot of people are waiting until they get off work.
Yeah,
whatever the case may be, and sit down and go through the first two episodes. But yeah, I hope we see more of this. I hope it gets a good reaction, not just from the people that are coming back to this style and this show, but the newcomers, right? Who probably aren't as exposed to the show from the 90s. So I'm hoping it gets a good reception and we see more of this style.
And guys, we have 18 watching right now. If you're watching on X, leave a comment in the comment section over on X. I'd love to hear what you think about X-Men 97, or what your thoughts are about the animation style, or what you're looking forward to X-Men 97. And obviously, if you're watching on the main channel, Nicotina, make sure to smash the like button and subscribe to the channel. And you can drop a super chat if you want to. I'm not saying you should, but it's up to you. Taladia asks, how long is each episode? I don't even know. I wasn't even paying attention to that.
I think it was about 29 minutes, I think.
Yeah, no, so it was good.
Your typical like 30-minute type television type episode. It feels a little bit longer because you don't have the commercials, right? So
yeah,
your average show is roughly like 18 minutes by the time you bake in all the commercials.
Not even that.
Solid 30 minutes X-Men.
Dude, I went back and I was watching some of the X-Men, the original X-Men series not too long ago, and each episode was 15 minutes long.
Yeah, because
and I was like, you bastards! Every Saturday morning, you had me watching the show for a half an hour, and I was only getting 15 minutes of content. I was like, oh my god, Fox Kids, you guys are assholes.
That's how they had to sell those toys, man.
What's up, Ruthie? Good to see you. Hope you're having a great day.
Those toys get sold.
Exactly. Right? I was like, oh my god, it's 15 minutes. So let's talk about episode 1 with the X-Men 97. The intro, yes, Anthony, I agree. The intro was dope. Sean, what did you feel, or how did you feel about the first episode?
I enjoyed it. I think it definitely set the tone right from the get-go, right? I mean, semi-spoilers, you already know what's going on with Xavier right from the get-go. They don't hold back on that as far as what's going on with that character. One of the things I liked is they introduced the Sentinels right away, pretty much right away, like 10 minutes in maybe, and then you saw the whole group of X-Men, you know, together working against that. One of the things I liked was in that battle was when Gambit kind of charged up Wolverine's claws, and he and beheaded one of the Sentinels. That was pretty dope. I like that whole scene.
Well, and like that whole storyline too was a huge. Well, I say a huge storyline, but each storyline was like a single episode. But I mean, like it was part of the ongoing storyline within the original X-Men series. So they went right back to that, and I thought that was so awesome that they went right back to that Sentinel storyline. I was like, dude, that is badass. And you saw, you saw a character that was a villain. Trask, I don't care. Trask was there, and it was just really, really cool. And yes, you basically just saw the X-Men working together and just totally kicking ass.
Yep.
And I was like, fuck yeah, dude, this is what I wanted to see. And I think this too is that, like, when you start thinking about live action, I think that when, if you were to do a live action and you were to do it with the X-Men already established or somewhat established, I think you can still pull that off without having to waste a lot of time with, everyone's origin story. That's going to take forever. And I think that's been one of the holdups with the X-Men in live action, is that how do we get all these characters introduced without giving their backstories? But I think a lot of fans are already familiar with the X-Men, and I think this is a great way to reintroduce, if not introduce, the X-Men to a wider audience. By watching these shows, they get familiar with the characters, they understand their stories, their backstories, and I think this is going to help when you get to the live action versions of the X-Men, which we're going to talk about a little bit later in the show. But I agree.
I think you mentioned a good point there as far as backstories, right? I don't think part of me doesn't feel it's necessary really anymore with many of these characters. We don't need the backstories anymore. We don't need to see how Logan becomes Wolverine and be Cyclops, Scott Summers and all that. Let's just get right into them being X-Men. Let's just get right into that story, which is what happens here, right? Again, it picks up from 90s, the original. We get right into it. It's going into that, setting the premise that you already know who these characters are. We don't need to tell you who they are. So let's just get right into the story. Let's just get right into the action and what we're trying to deliver here. I can't remember now if it was in the first episode or not when the jet gets attacked.
It was in the first episode.
Yeah, I think it was towards the end.
That was crazy. Like, it gets
Cyclops
fucking blown up.
And Cyclops is landing.
Yes.
That was
fucking epic, dude.
Peak.
Dude, the way Cyclops lands, I was like, the only thing I could think of was that, like, I'm like, dude, and I don't think it's the case, but I kept thinking, like, dude, if they end up casting Henry Cavill in that role, that scene in live action would have been so fucking epic. And that scene alone, I mean, already, like, he was establishing himself as a total badass. And then when he did that, I was like, dude, this is a much better Cyclops. Dude, he was even better than he was in the original animated series. In the original series, I always felt he was always too kind of caught up in his own ideals. This one, though, like, he was that same Cyclops, but he was just more confident, more badass, and like that landing he does. Yeah,
and he has to be, because now you don't have he's leading. He's the leader now, right? I mean, he's the one that's going to be responsible for the decisions for the group. So, I mean, I think in that aspect, when he, kind of like tapped his little X button on his chest and was like, "Hey, I got this, my X-Men," and then does that epic landing.
That was badass.
Yeah,
but the way they framed it too, where it was like this huge explosion as he was shooting. Oh, it was badass.
And then then the smoke clears, and then his silhouette starts to come through, and then you get the full, the full
dude, I was watching. I was like, that's badass. Yep. And then of course, like my fucking stupid mind is like, I hope that's Henry Cavill in real life. I know it's not going to be because he's probably too old for the role, but I just thought that'd be so badass.
I don't know. I mean, you got this de-aging thing out there. I mean, you could de-age him a little bit.
Him for the whole time, But they gotta have somebody who's like, who embodies that role, and I think Cavill could easily do that. But obviously, I think they're probably gonna find somebody a little bit younger. I actually thought the guy they picked for Cyclops in Days of Future Past, I think. I thought he was too young. I was like, dude, he looks way too young. He looks like a child. You know what I mean? I wasn't really buying that.
And a lot of them did in that film. I mean, obviously for many fans, Henry would just thinking about kind of some of the scenes that were done in Man of Steel that would kind of look similar to this, especially towards the end of Man of Steel. But I mean, I'm okay with bringing in a younger actor, or not a no name, but like a mid-level to play that role live action, and see that in live action. That'd be peak X-Men right there.
Peak X-Men, and again, like I was saying earlier, it's like when I was watching this show, I kept thinking, I was like, this is the reason why I've always felt like the X-Men were the A-list characters of Marvel. I mean, I love Iron Man, Captain America, all the Avengers, but they are more idealistic, and they are, like, in the comics at least, I always felt that they were a little more softcore characters, while the X-Men were edgy, they were hardcore, and they dealt with like controversial topics, especially topics based on like essentially racism, but obviously it's mutant and non-mutant, and
they touched on that a little bit already.
Yeah,
in
they
these first
did.
2 episodes, as far as from whether. From a political perspective, I think they definitely touched on that in episode 2. Pretty much a quarter of the way in, they started touching on that, and it kind of plays out through episode 2, right up until I think like the last 5 minutes. But I mean, they've always been able to bring in those controversial topics, and to your point, bring them in, but make it more of that human versus mutant story.
Yeah, it's like that type of controversy. It speaks so much to human nature and human history that a lot of people can relate to the story so much easier, because it's like, I understand that. I've learned about that in school. I've experienced that in life. So like those aspects, I just fucking love about the X-Men. And also in the first 2 episodes, like Wolverine had a big role in it, but like I didn't feel like. Because normally in live action, it's like heavy Wolverine, what I mean?
Yep.
Like I felt like it was kind of balanced out between all the different, characters. And of course you had Gambit, who was like feeling kind of weird because Rogue was having these conversations and private moments with Magneto.
Yeah. And on the Magneto character, I mean, I guess when I think of Magneto, my brain initially goes to the live action look of Magneto, right? And then you see what he looks like in these first 2 episodes. It's night and day, totally different look and feel. So for those who only have a reference of live action movies and who have never seen the cartoon or aren't really have delved into the comics, they're gonna see this. I think it will, I don't want to say shock them, but it will take them by surprise as far as his look and feel, because they're used to the kind of the cape, the helmet, and a very older looking Magneto, again from the live action, which they're not going to see here.
They're not.
And this Magneto is much more conniving, much more he's out to I'm going to assault the fields type Magneto.
Yeah, he actually reminded me a lot of the Fassbender Magneto, and he's another one too. If they brought him back as Magneto, it'd be so badass. But I loved how, you know, he even addresses his own conflicts or his own traumas that he had in his own life. It was, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and so it kind of led him to where he's at now. He's trying to make them understand, like, you know, like, I could kill all you guys right now, but I'm not going to, because I'm trying to honor my friend, you know?
Yeah, that was interesting, because I mean, for the episode, you know, for the good part of episode 1, there, you know, Cyclops is thinking, hey, you know, I'm the leader. I'm gonna take this, and then all of a sudden it's like just taken right from him. When Magneto shows up.
Well,
so that was an interesting turn.
It was, and the fact that Xavier left, and I'm just gonna say this 'cause I don't care. Xavier left
Spoilers.
everything. Yeah, spoilers. Here we go. Hold on. Do I have my spoiler? I used to have one. I think. Here it is. Spoilers. You've been warned. Okay. But no, it like the fact that Xavier leaves the mansion and all of his assets to Magneto. I think it's a brilliant idea, because it's like, hey, look. And it's kind of what they allude to later on, is that, you know, if I don't do this, then he will continue to be a villain to the X-Men without me. So if I leave him all of this, then because the way our relationship has kind of built out, he's going to want to honor the decision that he made. And I love that, like, in this iteration, you know, he's wearing the different suit, the suit with the M and no helmet.
No helmet.
And he says too, like, I don't have the helmet because I always felt like Charles was in my mind, and now that he's not around, he's like, I don't need that helmet on anymore. Although there are telepaths out there that can really fuck him up, but still, I get what they were going for. So there was a lot of exposition that kind of talks about, like, where they're at and why they feel the way they feel about certain topics. But one of the things I wanted to ask you about was, let me see if we can find it real quick. Here it is. One of the things I wanted to ask you about was, and people made a really big deal about this, and I really don't know why, was that Morph had, like, this, you know, they claimed it's a non-binary presence. You know what I mean? He was just Morph. But I mean, look, I think that if you're a shapeshifter, you know, how do you decide what gender you really are? I guess when you were, I mean, I wasn't there when you was born. I don't know. But I'm saying, like, you know, to me, this didn't bother me. I didn't see it like, oh God, why is he like that? I actually thought he looked kind of cool, and that was about it. The one thing they did do that was an improvement for me was that they changed his voice.
Yes, they did.
He didn't have the, oh, hey guys, that little whiny voice. He had a normal voice. I was like, oh, thank God.
Yeah, that was a welcome change. Especially when you look at how the other characters for this have been developed, and how, you know, their voice, whoever voiced them as well, none of them have, you know, some of them sound somewhat familiar from what they did previously in the original series, but yeah, his was a welcome change, and I'm okay with, you know, if you're a shapeshifter, take whatever. I mean, Mystique did that in the original, in live actions. I mean, she would be male, female. I mean, I know I think the character was primarily originally female, but yeah, that type of stuff, it didn't bother me. I wasn't going into this thinking, okay, what political DEI stuff are they going to try to force on any of this story? I totally just set that aside and say, okay, I want to watch this for X-Men 97, right? I want to see where this goes, where this picks up, and if, you know, that stuff comes up, it comes up, and, you know, if that's not your cup of tea, then, you know, turn the dial, right? I mean,
exactly.
That's gonna
I mean,
bother you.
they were already touching on so many topics that it didn't even matter that he was non-binary. It didn't matter.
Well, especially in the, I mean, if we think about just that type of stuff, right? I mean, the first episode starts off with, I don't know if he was Mexican, Brazilian, or whatever, right? But he wasn't white, right? I mean, the young kid, I can't remember his name now, it escapes me, that they were trying to save, or it was captured in the very first, like, 3 minutes.
Roberto da Costa.
Yeah. So I mean, there's that. I mean, you have that character there, and then I think in the second episode they were showing, you know, like almost like a political riots, right? Like we've seen previously against mutants. I mean, that could be taken and spun a certain way, right? So that type of stuff doesn't. I mean, like I said, either I'm going into this to enjoy it for the nostalgia. I want, you know, seeing that story continue from the, you know, the late 90s. And again, if it's not your cup of tea, turn the dial. It's just that simple.
But still, I mean, I agree. If it's not your cup of tea, fucking change the dial. You know, get over it. But at the same time, though, it's like this is X-Men. You know what I mean? I was like,
Exactly.
yes. I was like, finally, some real fucking X-Men.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, when it comes to it being a live action, I definitely think that, you know, it's going to feel kind of like what we're seeing here. They didn't really explain how Bishop is a part of their team now. He was just kind of there.
He was just there. I mean, he just popped up in the first like.
Yeah, he's like, hey, what's up? I was like, okay, there he goes. I thought they were going to have a line of like, oh, definitely.
But I wasn't expecting to see him. And
no.
when he popped up, I was like, oh well, this is a nice addition to this first episode, and then continuing on to the second. But yeah, I mean, as far as live action, I'm starting to take the approach when we look at like this Transformers, G.I. Joe. I feel the live actions we've gotten previously, like we look at this we look at this Logan/Wolverine, and you look at him in live action. We've never seen this in live action, right? There's always been that attempt, but there's always been that let's modernize it, give them, you know, this look or, you know, this type of suit. I'm the type of person now, I want to see this, but live action. I want to see these exact suits, their powers, the way they are portrayed in the animated series. Same thing with G.I. Joe and Transformers. Let's pick them up literally off the pages and make them live action. We don't need to change anything about that. Let's just make this. You make this, I think you're going to get a lot of people getting into X-Men. If you saw this, especially like we talked about earlier, the Cyclops landing, give me that in live action with Cyclops in this suit and the X-Men looking like this. I think it'd be very successful. Very successful.
I think so. And that's what brings me to my my next topic here, which is this going to come out right for me? I don't think it will.
And so far, while you're pulling up, so far from what I've seen thus far online, it's getting well received. These first 2 episodes, so it's a good
they were
thing.
Epic. I mean, even Storm's speech at the end of episode 2, that was epic. I was like, dude, you know what it reminded me of? And look, I know I'm getting a little carried away here, but like it reminded me, this is going to sound so stupid. It reminded me of like the ending of like the Chris Nolan Batman films where like they always had like a long dialogue speech where, you know, and it reminded me of that. And same with the music as well. I could see what they were going for. And I was like, yes, this is what I want when it comes to X-Men.
It's funny you say the music, because when they were fighting the Sentinels in episode 1, if you listen closely, it was that 90s nostalgia X-Men theme music playing.
Absolutely,
in the
dude.
It wasn't too loud to drown out what was happening in the scene or, you know, as they were fighting, but it was loud enough for you. If you recall the original, it would definitely hit that nail that you're like, oh man, I remember that music. That's perfect time to play it too. When they're fighting this classic villain. So
that was the best time to play it. I was like, yeah, this fits exactly what we're trying to do. But so this leads me to my next topic, which is basically my belief. Okay, I have no proof of this. This is just me speculating out of my ass. But I believe that X-Men 97 is going to be the origin story of the X-Men that you saw at the end of the Marvels. And so like when you saw Beast in this cartoon, you know, in this X-Men 97, he was dressed the same way he was dressed at the end of the Marvels. I mean, obviously it's a lab coat, but like it still looked the same. And not only that, but at the end of the Marvels, they made a point to have him look just like the animated version of Beast. Obviously, that's also how he looks in the comics. I'm not trying to like, you know, change that up, but what I'm saying is that like they made a point to do that. And so it wouldn't surprise me if the X-Men that we end up getting for like Secret Wars or Avengers 5 are the X-Men from the X-Men 97 series. Like this is their origin from that world that you saw at the end of the Marvels. And on top of that, it also wouldn't surprise me if the Hugh Jackman Wolverine that we get in Deadpool 3 is the Wolverine from this X-Men 97 series.
But if it is though, I mean, are we setting ourselves up to be disappointed for any future live action where Hugh may not be returning after Deadpool 3? Like, there's been these back and forth. I've heard. I mean, I don't know. I don't think it's been discussed. I mean, I don't know if you've discussed it on your channel or
a little bit.
Nerds, but all the things that Ryan Reynolds and now Hugh Jackman has backed Ryan Reynolds on pushing back against Bob and all these executives saying, no, we are not doing this with Deadpool 3. We are not, you're not going to push, Captain Marvel into my movie. You're not going to push all these, cameos in here. This is what we're doing. And from what I've heard and read is that the initial plan was that Deadpool 3 would set up multiple kind of buddy team ups between Deadpool and Wolverine. And my initial thought was, well, if that happens, could that be a way to bring Deadpool into like a live action X-Men 97, right? Like introducing him in, with like the core characters we saw in the episodes 1 and 2. But now I'm hearing that, Ryan is pretty much putting his foot down saying, I'm not doing any of this. I'm not going to do any more TV shows. I'm not going to do any more Deadpool movies if you do this. And he's really been holding Bob and all the other executives' feet to the fire to say, hey, this is one of your big money makers right now. You're not making a lot of money anywhere else. And I'm gonna hold your feet to the fire. So so all I have to say is while the Wolverine we see in Deadpool 3 could be the X-Men 97 version, if they pursue that and bring these characters, as we saw on the first 2 episodes, to life, who's going to play Wolverine? Because I don't think it's going to be Hugh Jackman going forward after Deadpool 3.
I would think that, based on some of the reports that I've read, is that I think that, you just like shifted. That was crazy.
Oh, it's I have one of those is it Insta 360? So it follows me as I move.
Oh, I was like, dude, you're like the Flash. I was like, my God, this is amazing. No, but I think that I think when it comes to Hugh Jackman's Wolverine, I really do feel like he's going to be around until Secret Wars. And I think after Secret Wars, they're going to do a soft reboot where they're going to reintroduce all the characters again. Because, you can only have Hugh Jackman for so long. And I think that if you have Hugh Jackman just for one outing of Wolverine, it's kind of like, hey, look, he's your moneymaker. Ryan Reynolds' Deadpool is your moneymaker.
Yep.
Those are the characters you got to lean on. So it would be Deadpool, Wolverine, and Spider-Man. Those are the 3 characters you got to lean on. And then I think Daredevil is going to help out as well when it comes to Spider-Man 4. But I would imagine they're going to be around all the way through Secret Wars. And then after Secret Wars is when we get, an all-new X-Men. Because something's going to happen in the end of Secret Wars that's going to softly kind of reboot everything. And it's going to integrate mutants into the MCU into one universe. Because right now, mutants are separate from the MCU.
Correct, yes.
I had a crazy theory about that back in the day, and then that blew up my face. I was like, okay, I guess they're not going to do that. I totally thought WandaVision was going to build up to like the whole House of M thing, where she already said no more mutants. And what we're seeing in the MCU 616 is the MCU with mutants removed. You know what I mean? And like, we had gotten to that point. We had gotten to the House of M in the MCU, but we never saw it because all we're seeing is the MCU with mutants removed and put into a separate universe. Yeah. So we'll see how they kind of do that, and that could be a way to bring back Wanda Maximoff if they wanted to. I think that'd be badass. But I still believe that the Wolverine that we're going to get in Deadpool 3 is probably this Wolverine 97, or he'll make some kind of comments. Because look, here's the thing. At the end of the day, when you have to, if you're going to introduce some of the nostalgic X-Men, there's been talk about James Marsden cameoing as Cyclops and some of the other characters such as Halle Berry and Femke Janssen making cameos in Deadpool 3. I think that if you are going to do that, I think it'd be really cool to bring them back as the X-Men for Secret Wars. And then after that, when 616 has to merge with, with that world that has the mutants, that's when you get
that reboot.
The reboot.
Yeah.
And that's why I think you can keep, all your characters at who they are in the MCU now, because when the other world merges with you, you can change some things up. Look, you could even reboot it to where, because we already know, like, there's been a lot of reports that says that the MCU is going to lean heavily into the X-Men after this supposed soft reboot. And if that's the case, then you could reintroduce Iron Man, Captain America, but it would be, it would be a new actor playing Steve Rogers, a new actor playing Tony Stark, and and they would just come into these films as already established, because you already know their backstory, but now we're in a new world. He's like, right? Yes, right.
Well,
thank you.
Well, no, yeah, I agree. But but Secret Wars isn't coming out for potentially another 3 years.
Yeah,
2027, I think. So I mean, whatever success that comes from these cameos, if they happen, Hugh back as Wolverine, and if it is that 97 type Wolverine that we get in Deadpool 3, they're gonna want to milk that somehow between this year and 3 years from now. So they're gonna, to your point, I think, have them show up in other potential shows, movies, maybe playing not the key role, but maybe a pivotal role to the story to keep driving this till we get to Secret Wars. Because I mean, when I look at the first 2 episodes of X-Men 97 and the future plans, I mean, there's the one character I want to see is Gambit. I want to see a live action Gambit in all of his glory. I mean, I know we were supposed to get that years past. I know the whole Channing Tatum thing was, he was originally, I think, either in talks or casted, but it never happened. I feel like many of these X-Men characters we've seen, but that's the one we haven't seen. That's been part of the main or core group, right? That we haven't gotten that live action for. And I think seeing his character, with the new Wolverine, whoever that would be, with a Cyclops, Jean Grey, right? And have that whole big X-Men team up. Like we saw this first episode, right?
Exactly.
Let's see that. I know they attempted that in the first X-Men live action movie. I don't think it necessarily landed because it just didn't feel like, in my opinion, didn't really feel like X-Men to me.
Yeah, I mean, they were all wearing the same suit. They took it. They were being very safe especially with their outfits. Even X2, which I like a lot, they were playing it safe with the outfits. X3 playing it safe with the outfits. The only time you ever saw them in their comic accurate suits was at the end of Days of Future Past, and then obviously Dark Phoenix. They had a version of their suits, but it was all the same suit. It was kind of like, well, why'd you go away from that? I don't quite understand that.
And that's also mean you were willing to suffer through Dark Phoenix.
Yeah, exactly. It was too hard. It was
too difficult. I just couldn't do it.
I couldn't do it. It was just too brutal. But let's talk about episode 2. And I thought episode 2 was really cool because you had Magneto, who is now in charge of the X-Men. Yep. He's wearing his new suit. He's out to prove that he's not this out of control character, even though he still shows characteristics of being out of control. But I liked the episode a lot. It was really powerful, and him being held, at the UN on trial, I thought was really good. The way that unfolded as well. And then obviously Storm gets shot, loses her abilities, and now we got to figure out how she's going to get those back. And the whole time I was watching it, I was like, in my mind, I was like, it has to be Sinister. It has to be Mr. Sinister.
Well, I think it raises the question is, this is only episode 2. And a core, well-known member of the crew just lost her powers. Who's next?
But not only that though, like on the heels of Magneto, you're the leader of the X-Men. Jean and I are about to leave, and you're down Storm, who's one of the leaders of the X-Men. I mean, she was a leader of the X-Men for a long time in the comics. She was also the leader, I think, of X-Men West Coast as well.
Yep.
So, but then came the biggest fucking plot twist at the end of the episode. So I'm gonna warn you guys right now, even though this might lose me viewers, but still I don't care. Spoiler alert, you have been warned. We're gonna talk a spoiler at the end of episode 2. Now granted, it's the animated series, so it's not like it's live action, but still, at the end of the episode 2, you saw Jean Grey show up again, looking all tore up, like, oh, I need the X-Men, like not even knowing where she was at, or not even knowing who she was looking at, and then it pans over to the other Jean Grey, who's like, has a look on her face like, what the fuck? So they're definitely doing the Madeline Pryor storyline. And if you guys aren't familiar with Madeline Pryor, she in turn ends up being a clone of Jean Grey that was made by Mr. Sinister. And that's why I think Sinister is going to be the one that's going to eventually, restore Storm's abilities. But she was made, Madeline Pryor was made by Mr. Sinister. And so in this case, in the comics, this came out after Dark Phoenix, so the real Jean Grey was already dead. But in this case, she's still alive. And so, and Madeline Pryor's also alive as well. So it's going to be interesting to see how they handle this. But I thought that was such a fucking badass plot twist. Because I kept thinking to myself, I was like, they're just going to disregard the whole thing with Cable's mom. So that's fine. I get it. What are you going to do? And
plot
then she
twist
showed up.
And cliffhanger.
Yeah,
definitely,
I was like, what?
You definitely like, now, where's episode 3? I need to know what's going to happen now. What's going to be the reaction of the X-Men now that they've opened that door? So yeah, definitely was definitely unexpected end to episode 2.
It was just like, look, at the end of the day, this was just really cool to see the X-Men come back. And this was the last comic book accurate iteration of the X-Men that we saw on television. Granted, we had live action movies, and a lot of those were really good, but this was, to me, this is I just love seeing this version of the X-Men come back. And I can't wait for episode 3. In fact, I'm probably going to do a watch party for episode 3 at midnight. That way I just want to see it so bad for next week.
When is the 3rd episode drop? I was trying to find a date.
I don't know. I would imagine it's going to drop Wednesday at midnight. If it does, I'm gonna stream it live because I definitely want to watch it. But dude, overall though, this was badass. And here's the thing too, is that when you see what they did with the X-Men 97, I'm like, dude, this is what you need to do with not only the X-Men but with the MCU in live action. You need to be edgier. You need to be more raw. I mean, it needs to have a slightly more serious tone. And I'm not saying go full on Zack Snyder serious tone like in the DCEU, which we love. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. We love it. But I think the MCU needs to be a little darker, a little more serious, sort of what you got in the early days of the MCU. Lately it's just been too much vanilla, and I think this is a great way to start that.
Well, and that's been I think I've been beating that drum for years, especially when Logan came out. So when Logan came out, when I went and saw that in theaters, and then I think I saw it twice in theaters, because the first time I was just
great movie.
I was, oh man, this is something different than what we've seen the Logan character be. It, to your point, they've played it safe, especially with this character. I think it's one of their most brutal characters, and Logan. The Logan film finally showed us the brutality of Wolverine and how brutal when he gets into combat or a fight, how it can go sideways. I want to see that in the MCU. I want to see that with a young, I guess so, a young, not dying Wolverine. Correct. But to your point, if we were to lift this 97 off the pages, give me the tone of Logan with these characters. I think the MCU has been, to your point, they've been playing it. They played it safe, kind of PG-13-ish.
PG-13,
for over a decade now. And I think it made sense at first, as you're bringing people into this universe, introducing these characters. But even as time went on, even when we got to Civil War, you had this epic battle between these two sides, and it was pretty cool to see. But it was just a normal backyard fist fight, right? Wasn't anything epic in my opinion. But yeah, these characters right here, if you tone them up a bit, make it a little bit more adult, a little bit more R-rated, I think you got something cooking there.
Yeah, I definitely think so. This gives the potential that X-Men in live action is going to be extremely badass, and I can't wait to see. Guys, we have 26 people watching right now. Make sure you follow me on X, and then make sure you smash the like button and subscribe to the channel. And that's going to wrap things up for our reaction to X-Men 97. Sean, I want to thank you for coming out here and joining me on this stream. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you.
Yeah, and obviously we'll do it again. And just for everyone else to know, there will be no Four Nerds episode because all 4 of us are not available. as it turns out. So we will see you guys next week on the Four Nerds. But that's why I wanted to do this broadcast today, because I want to have a chance to talk about it, and I love that Sean was able to join me because, dude, you're awesome.
No, man, thanks for having me. Happy to join
course.
anytime.
Of course, man. Guys, if you haven't done so yet, watch X-Men 97. It's fucking badass. I loved every minute of it, and I can't wait for episode 3. If episode 3 comes out at midnight on Wednesday, I'm going to go live, and we'll watch it together, all of us, and we'll kind of go from there. Sean, thank you so much. Where can they find you on social media?
Nerd Cosa Nostra. I'm on Twitter, Instagram. Not really that much on Facebook, but also on Threads as well. So yeah, just go out there, give me a follow, give me a like, and again, thanks for having me.
Of course, man. And guys, make sure you subscribe to the channel and smash that like button. If you want to support the channel, you can do so by becoming a member or joining us over on Patreon. Remember, I have 3 different channels that I'm be broadcasting on this channel. Dre Area Sports, Nicotina, which covers all this cool shit we're just talking about, and also Beyond the Unknown, which is going to be a different podcast I'm doing with my brother, but all of which will be on this channel as well as just bonus content for everybody. If you're a member, then you'll get the full raw broadcast of all the Beyond the Unknown episodes, so definitely check that out. And with that being said, you guys, thank you for tuning in, and we will see you next time. Peace!